Welcome back. I hope you're feeling good and comfortable, because now we will continue to fight misinformation online by looking at what Finland has uncovered and what other countries can learn on media literacy from Finland. As you see, we have a great panel sitting here, ready and eager to share their knowledge with you. May I introduce to you Christa Prusskij from Mediakasvatusseura, Leppäjärvi from Haaga-Helia, Mikko, Salo from Faktabaari, and Tiffany, Smyly from the Economist Education Foundation. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Let's start the discussion by finding out a little more about you and your organizations. Christa Prusskij, what can you tell about Mediakasvatusseura, the Finnish Society of Media Education that you represent?
Well, we are a small organization, NGO, working on media literacy or enhancing media literacy skills, especially with children and youth, and the educators and professionals working with the youth and children. But I think that the main thing is to become a citizen that can work within the society, having these skills and also digital well-being skills, so that they can be active citizens and maybe also, have their own opinions heard and seen in the society. So that's the main thing. But we produce materials, trainings, we attend seminars like this, and the themes are very varied, but critical thinking is very important. And maybe my first tip is to be critical why we are here today and what we're doing here today, why this seminar is being held, for example. Those kind of things we think.
Sounds great. What is the thing that makes you most worried according to media literacy right now?
Well, as the previous speaker said, hate speech is one thing, cyberbullying is one thing, but then there are many other aspects to data protection, for example. Where is the data going? What we are constantly giving online, that is a huge issue, as we probably all know. Also the kind of how to interpret things, what we see online, or how we use media, how we produce media. So many different aspects, really.
Yes, we will talk more about these problems later. Leppäjärvi, you are a media educator and journalism degree director at Haaga-Helia University of Applied Sciences. What can you tell about the role of Finnish press and universities in the ecosystem of media literacy?
Well, much, but maybe I will start by saying that when I'm educating future journalists, I think that they must be the first one who have great media literacy, and also that they understand the power they are having when they are doing the journalism, but also to understand what kind of other players there are in the same media landscape, and kind of be really aware of how people are taking, analyzing the information and data. And so this is I think that also journalism education has really changed after this disorder we have in the media landscape and information landscape.
What are you most worried about?
Well, maybe I'm most worried about how kind of well-being of people, because as you said in the first lines, that of course media literacy is a civics competence, but it's also so much to do how people are dealing with their lives, because we are so mediated, and so every decision we are making, it's we have lots of the information from media. So I would like it to be a good thing and not something that lead us for bad decisions or having bad feelings. So maybe the idea that people should take more responsibility of their own media literacy.
Yes, indeed. Mikko, Salo, Faktabaari is a Finnish fact-checking and digital information literacy service. What can you tell about your work, and what have you learned about fact-checking since you started in 2014? Has it changed a lot?
Yeah, a lot of things have changed since 2014. Those were the let's say the still easy days in Finland. We were kind of keeping a kind of threat for the politicians to keep it more or less like keep it in the facts, have a fact-based debate and all that. Ever since, with the growth of the online world and the platforms related misinformation campaigns and that one, it has evolved a lot. And what we have learned from fact-checking, that it probably works best as a method. It's like fact-checking is part of investigative journalism. It practically like gives you a wonderful approach to online content. But what we have learned as a fact-checker is that the online world is completely run by emotions. So that's more like an antidote to the entertainment thing. But on serious things, what we have been fact-checking, for example, elections, it's super important to kind of just like keep cool and stop, think, and check. And that's why we have now focused more and more on, while doing fact-checking, explaining how it's done. We are also provided a couple of guides that I will refer. I don't know, I'm going to have them on the screen, at least for the online audience, but on digital information literacy and the voter literacy that was quoted by CNN as well. But basically the idea is that we try to, as a small NGO, catalyze, we try to use the multipliers like the teachers and librarians to pave the world, to spread the word and get people curious on online and what is really happening. And something we are really bringing in on as well, just like on the fact-checking, that how our online world is really run and how it's financed. And practically we are working in the marketing-based algorithm, also the news world at the moment, at least for the young ones. And now when we are in the event sponsored by world's biggest marketing organization, I think it's very good to have the dialogue on this one. But,
yes,
and
that's important, of course.
Yes.
What are you worried about most? Is it AI?
What the business logics of the online world brings to us, and especially during the elections. When we are just entertaining ourselves online, it's perfectly fine. People want to get they want to get it easy, and that's where the platforms are really good. But the same logics works for the elections and all that, and that can be very easily misused as well. Well, if you learn something as a fact checker, you can it's all about ethics.
Yes.
It's like you can use the skills to manipulate you, or you can use the skills to empower the young people, especially to think about the information ecosystems they are.
Great. Tiffany Smyly, you are the Chief Program Officer at the Economist Educational Foundation. You have an international view on media literacy and have experience from both the UK and the US on media literacy work. What is your opinion on the media literacy work done internationally?
Great, thank you. And firstly, I'm not going to claim that I am the expert on global media literacy by any means, but our program is called Topical Talk, and it's used by around 5,000 teachers and educators globally. And we have a real focus on communities of education in the US and the UK. So I can share my small insights into those spaces. And I'm going to break my thoughts down into 3 categories. They all begin with C. I used to be a literature teacher, so I'm a sucker for alliteration. And those categories are commitment, collaboration, and content. And I think those are 3 key ingredients for great media literacy. And we see some areas where people are doing good globally and some challenges maybe that we see across all areas. So in terms of commitment, so we believe we need a commitment to varied and regular action around media literacy. And we are starting to see some legislation around media literacy and a real spotlight on it in the UK and the US. So in the UK, we currently have an online safety bill going through Parliament, and our Department for Culture, Media and Sport have an online media literacy strategy and some funding attached to that, which is fantastic. And in the US, ever since the 6th of January insurgency, you can imagine that there's been a real spotlight on media literacy there. But there are some problems around commitment. It's not compulsory in lots of curricula around the world. 9 out of 10 teachers in England really want it to be compulsory in the curriculum, but it currently isn't. So actually only half of teachers report any media literacy being taught in their schools. And it's usually in a very isolated one-off lesson as a tick box activity. And also the most vulnerable people that need to be reached aren't necessarily being reached. So only 4% of media literacy strategies and programs in the UK are directed towards people from disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds. And we know people from those backgrounds are more vulnerable to misinformation and less likely to have media literacy skills. My second C was collaboration. So I'm sure we'll all agree that we need collaboration across government departments, educational subjects, and organizations to have a really cohesive approach. And there are some fantastic networks. It sounds like you have some awesome networks. We have some too in the UK and the US of charities, educators, academics. For example, we have the News Literacy Network in the UK. But different government departments are often not talking to each other enough, and there's a real focus on online harms and that area within governments as opposed to supporting individuals and empowering them to develop skills. And in schools, collaboration across subjects is also very difficult in the UK. So teachers are so squeezed in their subjects to get through their content and their curriculum that there's very little space to explore the cross-curricular benefits of media literacy skills. So we often have maths teachers saying, oh, this isn't really relevant to my subject, but you know, there could be a fantastic lesson in maths looking at the base rate fallacy in COVID vaccination statistics, for example, but there's no space to think about that. And my final one is content. So we need the resources, tools, and then access for individuals, especially teachers, to engage with them. So excellent sites around fact-checking, but teaching resources as well. Problems, challenges, often people aren't aware of these tools. They exist, but there's no ecosystem to show them where they are. And I think we don't go young enough with them. So people are often surprised that we create resources for 9-year-olds and up, but we heard Ante say earlier, was it his 6- and 10-year-old are having their first steps into the online world? Yes. Many schools, especially in the US, outright ban these platforms at schools. So it's very hard to teach students to use them efficiently if they can't access them in schools. And one extra thing on the US there is some states now actually ban teaching the news or politics discussions at all, which makes media literacy discussions very hard. So sort of a quick summary of some of the good and the bad that I've seen.
Yes, sounds very interesting. Thank you so much. Nice to have you with us today. In this panel, we strive to give an overview of the Finnish media literacy ecosystem and to discuss the best practices, and of course also about the potential sharing these practices abroad. Now we heard what you are doing. Let's then find out what other things Finland is doing well. Who wants to start? Why is Finland doing so well in the media literacy index? What do you think? Mikko.
I think I know the index, and I've read and I know the author. It measures the things that we are strong. Let's put it that way. Yeah. It measures the quality of journalism, at least this far. It's been good. It doesn't look extremely well from the financial point. Once again, linked to the platform world. It measures, of course, the education level, and it measures this kind of a trust indicators that we are doing one very well, and that's part of, let's say, the Nordic approach. We really trust each other in here, and that's what at the same time makes us pretty vulnerable. But it measures the right things for us, and of course it's a good symbol for a current situation, but the world is going so much further, so we have to really develop a lot as well.
Yes, that's true. We increasingly meet young people with a skeptical attitude toward journalists. Have you noticed this attitude?
Yeah, and it really has changed. I think when I was a young journalist, there of course was something, and I think it's only healthy that there is critics towards journalism. But now it's more like really an issue of trust. And also Tuija Saresma was talking about this trust issue. And if we are really relying on the trust between people in Finland when it comes to media literacy, as Mikko also said, it's something that we all need to protect and find the ways how also in social media how we are doing it there. Because now the hate speech, for example, it's just it's a weapon against trust, and it's trying us to think others and us kind of thinking. Nordic countries, we are talking about this welfare state, but there's also this concept of media welfare state. And I would really, really much like us to be model of the how to support and defend trust as citizens when it comes to media, and also the open society conversations. And I think that in journalism education we need to really much think about this commitment thing when it comes to audience. You were talking about teachers, but the commitment that why would people want to have journalism in their life? There are these researches that some of them are avoiding news, and the one reason is that they don't feel that the journalism like they see represent them. So I think that if you would like to think what is a media welfare state, it is a place where people different kind of groups can feel that they are represented in media. Yes. And also that they are part of the conversation in media.
Yes. So Finland is still a media welfare state. Tiffany, is this a thing that makes Finland so good in the media literacy index? What do you think?
I used to be a teacher, as I've said, and
yes.
We always, when in education, we always used to be importing strategies in education from Finland because you're also always at the top of the list there. And what we found when I brought them into schools I taught at was that you can take the exact strategies and try and plonk them in, but unless you have the system around it and kind of the various organisations feeding in, it's not going to work. And that starts from a really young age and across lots of different areas. And I think what I'm hearing from several of you already is this idea of the relationship of an individual to systems or to the media, and that's at the core of getting great media literacy. So individuals having trust in the media and feeling represented, but also those systems trusting individuals to make good choices or think critically. And I think that's maybe what's happening well here.
Yes. What do you think, Christa Prusskij? You are representing a Finnish Society of Media Education.
Yes, and we do think about these things daily.
Yes.
Well, first of all, Finland has a very long tradition with media education, like from the 50s already. So that is one asset we do have. It's also embedded in the curriculums from the early childhood onwards. And it's talked about now as a skill all the people should have from 0 to 100-year-olds. So we kind of recognize that. But at the same time, we can't do it on our own, or just to put it on the teachers, or one or our organization. Everybody has to work on that, and it has to include the governments. So to say that Finland is doing well, we can't give like one trick and say this is it, because it is a whole society's thing. So it's the governments, it's the tech companies, it's regulations, what we have or will have, EU And you know, so it has many different levels that has to be taken into account in order to work. So as you said, that you can't just take it and put it into another country. It's just not going to happen. So,
Mikko.
No, I was more wondering, are we already for lessons learned? So definitely on starting very early. And I mean, nowadays it's starting before you get this one and the different apps. And what we do right is that we have very well, we invest in education, at least the education level of teacher training this far. So the teachers are very highly educated. They have at least been very motivated, but they are struggling with their efforts and the pressure that is coming from all sides. Of course, everybody wants to lean on that one. And that's why, for example, we try to provide them some help. But they need very easily made materials in schools for doing that one. And then we need the kind of supportive structures for that one. In Finland, it could be, we still have relatively well-functioning library system that has a lot of potential. I think in this type of situation, whatever you think about the commercial media policies, to have a public broadcaster is a huge asset in this type of market failure era, where it's part of the Yle mandate as well to help out, because they can still reach a lot of audiences like we don't have as such, for example.
Anne.
Well, maybe our challenge in Finland is that we think we are so good, and we are always told that we are so good, and always when I'm abroad, I've been asked, how do you do it? And then it's like Tiffany said, it's about structures. So you cannot kind of just put some nice ways to teach there. And so more and more, I think that media literacy is really a civics thing.
Yes,
and this active citizenship might mean, I think it means, that media literacy must be something active also from the individual's part, that when we see something that we don't believe or we think it hate speech or something that we don't want to see in our media landscape, we as individuals also need to act. It's not activism, it's kind of a neutral thing to do, to act if you are active citizen. And because the structure can be also very easily broken, as we have seen, for example, in Hungary. 12 years ago, they were they had 8th place in this press freedom index, which also was one of the things we were measured to have some good media literacy. And now they are on it was 92 the place.
12 years.
Yeah, so it can be really, really easily broken if they are very active people to broke it. So we need to also actively protect.
Yeah,
and prevent.
Yeah,
true. Very, very important, of course. And the media landscape is changing very fast at the moment. So it's a process that you have always to reboot yourself and your thinking and your attitudes to understand what's actually is happening.
And you cannot control it.
No, you
Yeah,
can't.
and I think that's where really focusing on skills development
Yes.
is important, because the platforms, the ways that information is being received is ever changing. So of course it's important to imbue the knowledge around that and specific techniques
Yes.
to engage with that. But actually it's the skills of critical thinking, of problem solving, creative thinking, communication, that if we teach them effectively, they should be applicable
Yes.
to the changing landscape.
Yeah, that's so true. So let's take a round. Is there anything in Finland we could do better? Because there's always something we could do better. So what could we do better?
Yes, we can do many things better. We are not perfect in no means. So I think, as mentioned before, that the curriculums have the multiliteracy written in and all that, but it doesn't mean that it's been studied in the universities by the teachers or people studying become teachers. So all those kind of avenues where you can learn as a professional or as an educator or youth worker, they need to learn about these things. But but at the same time, as I said, it's not only their job. It's the family's job. It's a job of the governments to give funding or new policies, think about it more actively. And the tech companies also to kind of take their responsibility in this, because people have created the whole of this realm, so we can, or we have to learn to navigate in it, and not one individual can do that. So I think there's still a lot of things we can do. Maybe one thing I would like to say also, that there's been a lot of talk about the basic literacy skills, especially here in Finland, that it's going down. And it seems a little bit that it's been kind of the basic literacy skills against the media literacy skills, which is kind of a wrong way to do it, or wrong way to think about it, or the digitalization, because that can be a good thing for us as well, not only bad thing. It has definitely problems as well, but I think good basic literacy skills is the base for all of the media literacy skills.
Well, maybe two things. I would like us to create an atmosphere that we would like to mind other people's business, kind of, because we are, as Finns, we might be too quiet when somebody is getting hate speech, for example, in social media. So I would like us to be more active, and as I said, not in the way, the activist way, but it's normal to really say something if there's happening something we don't want. So this activeness is one thing, and then I think in Finnish the word critical its connotation is quite negative. I don't know how it's in other languages, but I would like us to speak about healthy, being in a healthy way critical. Because if you are only critical, then we are already back in the trust issue, that you don't trust anything.
Yes,
so
that's so true.
to work your way in media in a way that you know something about your sources, and also to have that literacy and a good general education, that you can compare information. And because it's not that you can only verify some fact, you need to verify the context and why I'm told these things. So I understand that I can have a control a bit, and I don't have to be critical towards everything, but I need to work my way.
Mikko.
I think we are quite in a hurry, especially for the young people, to kind of understand the information ecosystem they are, the environment they are, and to really go for the sourced material, something that we call quality, but at least like it's based on something. We know that now the ChatGPTs are coming and they're creating a world that is not based on anything. It's just, masses of data, but not really what is it based on. So that's kind of somehow a dystopia. It's of course very fascinating and all. It can be used for some creative things, but for real stuff. But in like Nordic countries where we have the institution, probably elsewhere as well, empower the functioning institutions like schools, libraries, this type of things, a public broadcaster in Finnish cases. Then I think we have a golden opportunity with the EU legislation coming into force now, and really it should be implemented, because it's a very nice promises, but how to implement it, because it really puts some limits for real regulative limits, not just self-regulation with the big tech companies that practically rule the information ecosystem at the moment. And in order to be doing then some really critical, curious-driven thing, we need really independent funding for a diversity of content. And one of my fears is that, for example, media literacy, really on the big scale, on the EU level, is giving to the platform companies to do. They are good in some parts of it, but they will never address the critical parts of it.
That's so true. Tiffany, Smyly, now when you heard about the Finnish system, you said that you can not copy the model right away, but is there anything you could think about that we could export to other countries, something that other countries could pick up from Finland?
Yeah, well, I definitely think the sort of skills focus
Yes.
and sort of bringing that in from a curriculum perspective. Critical thinking's been mentioned by all of us, and this idea of encouraging curiosity.
Yeah.
So I think that that's one thing that can be started very young. Embedding as a mandate into curriculum, I think, is essential, whether that is just understanding that that can be cross-curricular. You know, we think media literacy is modern literacy, but I think that's definitely needing to happen. The idea of teacher training and teacher support, so both creating the space for them, but they might have access to lots of content, but how to use that, how to have student-led discussions about these quite complex issues in the classroom. I think that's a really important one. Going young, as I've agreed on already. And this idea of active, so taking action and giving autonomy to young people as well. So to feel like they're making the decisions and upskilling themselves. So, and as a final point, I agree on the funding thing as well. I think I've observed everywhere that funding is an issue, and it can often get in the way of collaboration because lots of organizations are competing for the same funding in an extremely underfunded area.
Yeah, so it's very important, of course. Mikko, Salo, your associate Kari Kivinen has exported the Finnish model to schools in Uganda. What have you learned on?
I actually just fact-checked it with Kari.
Okay, good.
I'm not aware of that. I know that Kari has been doing some kind of awareness-raising work and what we can with our resources in Asian countries especially.
Okay.
But our efforts have been still with these resources more in the Nordic scale. We have an EDMO hub that will be discussed or was discussed earlier, called Nordis, where we have piloted this digital information literacy, and Kari has been a kind of a number one spokesperson for that one as a teacher and with a research background as well, and an independent actor next to Faktabaari, of course. But so people are really interested on making the link with the digital information literacy to the democracy questions, because this is what is at stake when we see what is happening around us. This is not anymore the kind of nice thing that we started and in all that. So it's a really critical thing, and there is a lot of big talks on media literacy, but really to get it serious and there all the actors are needed, but with a good, let's say, how would I say, firewalls, so that everybody knows what they are good at.
And now we see how important it is to have a fact checker even here.
Yeah.
Thank you. So are there any factors preventing the model to be scaled further, do you think?
I think we touched the funding point.
Yeah, the funding, of course, but anything else? Tiffany?
Maybe not directly answering your question, but as you've mentioned Uganda, I think that often people are looking quite individually at whether it's their community or their nation or their legislation. And I think one thing that's difficult to expand is collaborating across borders and bringing different perspectives in, both for young people or individuals, to see different perspectives on the same stories in the news, where, you know, hearing different voices and learning from different people as well. I think there's a real barrier there in sharing across borders and spaces.
Yes, Anne.
Yes, it's so kind of funny that when I'm teaching critical thinking, so every time in the group there is plenty of people that don't need that, but other people needs it. So maybe all of us think that we know these things, but other people should be more critical and use more time for learn those skills. And then it makes me just think that it's about skills, but it's about awareness that how a human head really works, how we receive information, because all of us are really vulnerable when it comes to information because of emotions, but also because values. We want to believe, we really want to believe in some things, so it's really hard to believe in something which we don't kind of think that we want it to be like that. So this is also what I mean when I'm talking about this active and and taking responsibility of your own media literacy, that also be ready to think why I am thinking what I'm thinking.
That's so true. Do we have any questions from the audience? And by the way, you can raise your hand if you want to comment or ask any questions. Yes, we have one. Can you please bring the microphone to the lady in the second row here on the right side, please? And if you want to send any questions online, you can do that as well in the chat here under this square. So feel free to ask and comment. Here we go.
Yeah. Hello. So my question would refer to the power of having registered identity. Do you think this would solve the issue? And I'm coming from, for example, in the past, in the EU, for sure, we were thinking about federated identities. So from all EU states becoming like choosing one identity, which would be the only source to connect to different systems, digital systems. So what do you think about that? Would be a solution?
Mikko.
So you mean like if people would be authentically, for example, online, so that it knows that it's Mikko now taking this one and not just anonymously. I think it would be at least educationally very good, so that you are responsible what you are saying. I don't know, there has been some studies that in countries where it's really polarized, people don't care anymore. But I think in Finland it still has an effect, and it gives you the kind of at least I think it's necessary you stand what you are saying, and you are accountable what you are doing. We should be all accountable what we are doing, and as such, I think it's a step towards the right direction with the first site.
Tiffany.
I think you want to be a little bit careful there, maybe in a nation or an area where there is a lot of freedom of the press. You might feel like that makes sense, but we had the example of Hungary slipping down a system, and actually anonymity is very important in some nations where there are groups of people that are discriminated against. So I'd be careful on that.
Yeah, I would specify that this works in democratic circumstances. In other contexts, it's of course completely, and this is you have to kind of balance it towards the context.
Anne.
Well, I'm with Tiffany here, but I'm also with Mikko. In the ideal world, it would be great that we all will talk as Papa and Anne, but that's so true that we will then make it even more hard in those countries.
As we heard earlier today, cooperation between different organizations and actors plays a very important role in the work done here in Finland. As a last question, I would like to ask, how do you interact together? How does this collaboration looks like in Finland, and what can we learn about that? Christa?
I think we are lucky in Finland in that sense that we do have the National Audiovisual Institute, for example, who is part of this program as well. And they have done, for example, this media literacy policy within or with the field of different actors. So we do collaborate a lot. It is our strength. It's impossible to do this work just on your own. So it can be some projects or fundings or coming to seminars to talk or whatever, but it is important to do that.
You talked about collaboration earlier, Tiffany. Is there something we could?
I think we're all learning around collaboration. But I mean, for example, just offering opportunities as well, and sort of all coming together with this sort of one vision. So, the reason I'm here is because our organisation has friends at Google in the UK, and someone said, "Oh, can someone come along and speak?" And now I have this opportunity to hear really great ideas today that I can now bring back and hopefully use in our systems. So I think it's really about being open to conversations and bringing people into them.
Not only in the country, but EU-wise and worldwide. Yeah, of course. Mikko?
I think, yes, we have the kind of good structures for that, but at the moment we have already now gathered a couple of times to really see where the world is going, because it's going so fast, and try to come up, and that's where for example, University of Helsinki has helped us to put together, Sitra has put us together, so to say, and really to understand what are the future skills that are needed, and that would be important. And of course, to cooperate, it makes sense if we have the resources to do something bigger. And I think that's, for example, the role for the Googles, and give the visibility for the independent media literacy, information literacy content. I think that's where it started. I mean, for example, this seminar, to give visibility for our videos, I mean, that don't trend without us paying for the Google. So now this type of thing is important. But outside that, for example, of course, the Media Literacy Week we are living now is probably the demonstration and one of the longest tradition in Europe on that one.
Anne?
I could only add maybe that to see it really kind of from have the perspective that we need to support the structure. So it's not only about how we are dealing with media literacy and how literated people are, but all those people that are doing work for the structure are kind of also working for media literacy. I'm thinking that when we are now having a project in inclusive journalism, we are really supporting media literacy, because then we are doing journalism that so many people more, I hope, will feel that they are represented there.
So trust is important, media, taking care of the media welfare, state is very, very important, collaboration is important. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience. We really appreciate your insights. Thank you for your time. And now we are going to continue. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.